Hello, welcome back. This lesson focuses on engaging students, answering the question, is this important? How to stimulate engagement from the Highly Engaged Classroom textbook by Marzano and Pickering for the classroom teacher. Now, fundamentally, classroom activities that make connections to the real world help generate a positive response to the question, is this important? With this understanding in mind, we consider three main ways that a classroom teacher can help students affirmatively answer the emblematic question, is it important? By connecting to students' lives, connecting to students' life ambitions, and encouraging application of knowledge. First, we look at strategies to connect material to students' lives. The first part that we will examine is comparison tasks. Physical characteristic component. An example of physical characteristic might be a science teacher addressing alligators might want to set up an activity that asks students to compare the physical characteristics of an alligator with anything of choice. One student might compare the fast but brief land speed of an alligator to Usain Bolt sprints. This student might enjoy track and field and compare his own performances or her own performances to that of the alligator. The second in this section would be process comparison. A science teacher again might focus on the functions and processes of the cell. The teacher might ask the students to focus on selectively permeable membrane when making their comparison. And then a student who enjoys Star Trek series might compare a selectively permeable membrane to the transporter on the Starship Enterprise. Because like the membrane allows nutrients to enter the cell, transporter allows the good guys to enter the ship. And then, of course, the teacher would have to bring them back to reality and let them know what is real and what is science fiction. Then we look at sequence of events comparison. A historical content frequently involves important sequences of events. For example, a unit on the era of the Kennedys might be used by a social studies teacher to compare the events leading up to and immediately after the blockade of Cuba. When asked for a comparison, one student might be a cheerleader and say, oh yes, over the summer, our cheerleading team was trying to select new uniforms, but the coaches and the team captains could not agree on which uniforms to select. The disagreement went on all summer, and then finally, of course, they came really close to not having uniforms at all for the first fall football game. The fourth would be cause and effect relationships. An example of this might be an economics teacher addressing the student who is interested in going to the movies or going to, actually, probably wouldn't be going to the movies would be a good comparison, might want to be going to really see a nice play or an orchestra performance. And in that comparison, cause and effect comparison, might want to compare that to inflation, to standing ovations in the theater house. Standing ovations are supposed to be rare, a real honor, but the student has noticed that it seems like standing ovations have become common, even in orchestra performances, almost standard at the end of a performance. Just like the value of a dollar decreases when more dollars are in circulation, the value of a standing ovation decreases when they happen so frequently. Then we look at psychological characteristic comparison. Now, psychological characteristics refer to habitual behaviors or tendencies an individual might exhibit. Such characteristics typically apply to real people or characters from fiction. For example, during a unit on Abraham Lincoln, the teacher might make note of the fact that Abraham Lincoln demonstrated tremendous perseverance. He had many failures in his life before he finally became a successful politician, and usually is considered to be the best president this country has ever seen. And then we look at fame or notoriety comparisons. Now, this one would easily be used to compare the life of Joseph or the life of Moses because they had so many different phases in their lives. Now, one strategy to connect material to students' lives that is usually overlooked is the analogical reasoning task. And this one's significant because we need to teach the students how to make analogical reasoning, how to do analogical reasoning, especially since this is something that's significant on standardized tests and state regents tests. A simple one would be something like comparing the carpenter is to the hammer as the painter is to, right, or the heart is to the circulatory system as the is to the good. You can make up your own. The next section we want to look at connecting to students' life ambitions. A very simple way to do this one would be to help the students to come up with personal projects. Now, Heidi Hayes Jacobs in 2010 came up with some really good phases of questions that we need to ask as to help the students to as they are coming up with their personal projects. The first question we want to make sure that the student asks is, what do I want to accomplish? During this first phase, students are asked to identify a personal goal that interests them. Ideally, students select a topic they are greatly excited about or even passionate about. In the beginning, students may be shy about sharing such goals, primarily because they do not want to be teased or ridiculed, but the teacher can help them through this process. In the next phase, we want the teacher to ask, who else has accomplished the same goal, or who will support me? And it's during this phase that students look for heroes or role models and mentors to establish a support system for them. In the next phase, the student needs to answer the question, what skills and resources will I need to accomplish my goal? The student needs to, in phase one, the student was geared towards thinking without limits, but now they come to reality, focusing on the hard facts of accomplishing this goal. What is it that I need to find? How am I going to get the money to get the resources to accomplish this goal? In the next phase, what will I have to change in order to achieve my goal? Students need to identify that they need to change something in their behavior in order to get there. And the willingness to change the current behavior that is not contributing to a goal is a centerpiece of truly great accomplishments. In the next phase, the student answers the question, what is my plan for achieving my goal? Or how hard will I have to work to get there? They should think of the plan as a general outline for the future, realizing that it will change as different circumstances and opportunities arise. And this is when the mentor becomes very important. In the next section, it's very important because now we look at the small steps. What small steps can I take right now, this minute? And of course, the teacher needs to communicate to the students that completing short-term goals, those that can be accomplished in just a few days or a few weeks, can help them accomplish their long-term goals. And then the reflection time comes. How have I been doing? What have I learned about myself during the time when they were completing the small steps? Help them see what they gained over the last few days or over the last few weeks. Then we encourage the application of knowledge. We can help the students to define cognitive challenging tasks. The first one is decision making. During decision making, help them identify the decision, generate and prioritize the criteria, apply the criteria to alternatives, and then based on the reaction to the selection, help them make the final decision. The next section for designing cognitive challenging tasks will be problem solving, and help the students to identify the goal, then tell them that they need to identify the barriers, help them to consider alternative ways, help them to select and try alternatives, and then based on the results, go ahead and achieve the goal. Then we look at experimental inquiry. Identify what's being observed. Use what you know to explain what you're observing. Then based on your explanation, make a prediction. Don't be afraid. Construct an experiment. Based on the results, decide if your explanation and prediction were confirmed. And then investigate. Identify the concept, the historical event, the hypothesis. Explain the areas of general agreement that are out there. Generate and then defend what you did to clear up any disagreements that you may have found. Does this sound like the scientific method? Definitely. Then we want to encourage application of the knowledge. This is the last section. And then in this section, as we are encouraging application of knowledge, we are helping the students to provide choices. We help them with choice of tasks, choice of reporting formats, choice of learning goals, and choice of behaviors. In the choice of tasks, the students will, for example, let's say a language arts teacher wants to employ a comparison activity. They want to invite students to compare a text that they are reading in class to something of personal interest. So then you have the students compare the psychological characteristics of the main character, compare a sequence of events of the story, or compare cause and effect relationship in the text to the topic of choice. And then what's meant by choice of reporting format, give the students an opportunity to tell how they are going to be assessed. They can choose a written report, an oral report, dramatic presentation, a debate, videotape. You get the idea. And then the choice of learning goal. Now, this should not be confused with the teacher setting the learning goal. By helping the student to select their learning goal, you're actually helping them to be able to understand what the teacher had in mind for the learning goal that's being set. And then the choice of behaviors, that's identifying desirable and undesirable behaviors. And then as groups, you can help the students create symbols for what's a good behavior and what's an unacceptable behavior. Then in groups, allow the students to give presentations on appropriate behavior for an activity or for class behavior. Then discuss with the whole class the living space. Then you might want to help them to understand that sometimes we compromise, and then help the students to get a commitment. Remember, we want to keep all this in mind in terms of real-world application. Thank you so much. We want to make sure that as you are following through with helping the students answer the question, is it important, that you remember that God is there to help you as you are witnessing to His students in your area of the vineyard. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.